They say betrayal is a kind of poison. It creeps slowly through the veins of trust and turns love to ashes. When Elsa Greenwood discovered her husband Andrew's affair, her world teetered on the edge of ruin. As if the betrayal wasn't enough, Andrew did the unthinkable. He let his mistress choose their unborn child's name. That single decision fanned the flames of Elsa's despair into scorching fury. On the brink of labor, this pregnant wife altered her will, setting off a chain of shocking twists. This is a story of shattered vows, hidden motives, and the desperate fight for control. No matter the cost, Elsa Greenwood could still remember the day she said, "I do" to Andrew Greenwood, beneath the old willow tree in her grandmother's backyard. She had worn a lace gown that caught the sunlight like a promise of forever, and Andrew had stood with tears in his eyes, ready to protect her from every storm life might throw their way. Back then, he was a kind man, gentle, always searching for ways to make her life easier. They had whispered promises under that willow, sealing them with a tender kiss. If anyone asked her about her marriage, Elsa would light up like a 1,000-watt bulb. But as the years passed, cracks began to show in their happily ever after. Work demanded more of Andrew's time, especially after he took a senior position at Harwell Pharmaceuticals. He travelled frequently so often that Elsa could hardly remember the last weekend he spent at home. He insisted it was all for their future to secure a life free of financial worries. She tried to believe him. The first sign that something was wrong came from a simple lipstick stain on Andrew's collar. It was a faint smudge, easily overlooked, but the color was bright pink, nothing Elsa would ever wear. She confronted him about it, and he laughed it off. "A co-worker gave me a hug," he explained with a dismissive wave. "It's nothing, Elle." She wanted to believe him. Love can make a person as trusting as a child, yet the uneasy knot in her stomach refused to disappear. Every time Andrew left for a business trip, Elsa felt a silent dread. Had her husband, her best friend, grown into a stranger? One crisp autumn afternoon, Elsa decided to surprise Andrew with a weekend trip to Lake Tahoe. She wanted to reignite the spark in their marriage, which had been reduced to flickers of routine. As she rummaged through Andrew's desk drawers, searching for his travel wallet, her hands brushed across a folded piece of paper. The words caught her eye. Reservation for Andrew Greenwood and Clarissa Henderson. Presidential suite. Her heart pounded. Clarissa Henderson. The name sounded vaguely familiar, perhaps someone from Andrew's office. Yet Elsa had never heard Andrew mention a Clarissa, and certainly not in the context of a romantic getaway. She looked at the date. It was from a month ago, the same time Andrew had claimed to be at a medical conference in San Diego. Elsa's hands trembled. She wanted to tear the paper to bits, but a surge of adrenaline made her methodical. She folded it again, placed it back into the drawer exactly how she found it, and stepped away as if the desk were on fire. Outside, the wind rattled the window frame, a cruel echo of the storm brewing inside her chest. That night, when Andrew came home exhausted from work, Elsa was waiting. She had tried to calm herself, rehearsed 1,000,000 times how she would approach him. "Andrew," she began softly, "can we talk?" Without warning, tears welled up. He walked over, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, the touch she once found so reassuring. "What's going on, Elle?" he asked carefully. She pulled back, looking him square in the face. "Who is Clarissa Henderson?" Her voice shook. She forced herself to keep eye contact, searching for any flicker of honesty or a sign of immediate regret. Andrew's face went pale. His Adam's apple bobbed in his throat. She's Someone from work, that's all. He tried to summon his usual cool composure, but the tremble in his voice betrayed him. Elsa swallowed. Is she the reason you haven't wanted to touch me for months? The reason you keep traveling? Why I found a hotel reservation for the two of you in a presidential suite? She spat the words out quickly, as if they tasted bitter. He stammered. Look, it's just a mistake. It was a business function and Clarissa managed it. Maybe the reservation was labeled incorrectly. But Elsa sensed the half-lies weaving through his words. She pressed further. Andrew's eyes flicked from side to side as though searching for an escape. Then at last the tension snapped. Fine, he blurted. I don't love her, Elle. You have to believe me. It was an impulse. A fling. It was never supposed to turn into this. Elsa's knees buckled, and she caught herself on the couch. A fling. It felt like her heart was physically tearing in two. Andrew tried to comfort her, but she brushed him off. Get out, she whispered. It was only 2 words, but they carried the force of a collapsing universe. He stood there, shame twisting his features. In the hush of that dreadful moment, Elsa's world broke open in a way she never thought possible. Life has a relentless way of testing a person's breaking point. The very next morning, Elsa woke up to an unusual wave of nausea. She had missed her period, but chalked it up to stress. Deep down, she had always wanted a baby with Andrew, someone to bring fresh hope into their marriage. Yet after the fiasco the night before, her mind was in turmoil. Still, an intuition tugged at her. She had a home pregnancy test in the bathroom cabinet. With trembling hands, she took the test. Minutes later, the small screen displayed a single word. Pregnant. Elsa collapsed onto the cold bathroom tiles, sobbing. Joy and despair slammed into her simultaneously. A pregnancy should be a celebration. But how could she welcome a child when her marriage lay in ruins? She mustered up the courage to call her close friend, Linda Cortez, a woman she had known since kindergarten. Linda listened quietly, then told Elsa to see a doctor immediately. That afternoon, Elsa found herself in Dr. Harriet Liu's office. As Dr. Liu conducted the ultrasound, Elsa watched the fuzzy, delicate shape of a tiny life forming. A heartbeat strong and steady reverberated through her eardrums, almost overshadowing her own frantic pulse. Tears streamed down her face. Her child had done nothing wrong. This was a chance at love, an innocent beginning, but it was overshadowed by Andrew's betrayal. Dr. Liu squeezed Elsa's shoulder gently. Babies can be healing, she offered, in ways you'd never expect. Elsa nodded, not trusting her voice. Once the visit ended, she stepped out into the corridor, tears blurring her vision. She dialed Andrew's number. He deserved to know. As soon as he picked up, she uttered the words that changed everything. I'm pregnant. When Andrew heard the news, shock and excitement flickered across his face. He arrived home that evening, carrying a bouquet of Elsa's favorite flowers, calla lilies. It was a gesture that tugged painfully at her heart. She was still furious, still devastated, but the idea of giving the baby a complete family weighed heavily on her mind. Elsa Andrew said quietly, I am so sorry. You have to believe me when I say I never meant to hurt you. Clarissa was a mistake. Elsa glared at him. A mistake that went on for months. A mistake you meticulously planned hotels for. He looked stricken. I know I've messed up, but please, I want to be a father to our child. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Elsa let out a slow breath, shoulders sagging as though carrying a boulder. I don't know if I can forgive you, she admitted. But we have a baby to think about now. I need time. Andrew nodded watery hope in his eyes. Over the next few weeks, he tried to prove he was serious about repairing their marriage. He took Elsa to her prenatal appointments, consulted with Dr. Harriet Liu about safe exercise regimens, even offered to attend therapy. They went to a few sessions together, each one an emotional roller coaster that ended in tears more often than resolution. In quiet moments, Elsa caught glimpses of the man she once loved. The one who made silly faces at dinner, who jumped out from behind doors just to hear her laugh. Sometimes her mind teased her. Maybe we can work this out? She wanted to believe that love could triumph, but doubts lingered. Late one night, she checked Andrew's phone as he slept, a wave of guilt washing over her. There in his messaging app was a text from Clarissa Henderson. "Are you going to tell her you love me?" No responses. But the implication was chilling. Andrew was still in contact with Clarissa. That seed of doubt rooted itself firmly in Elsa's psyche. Even the joy of pregnancy wasn't enough to extinguish the burning sense of betrayal. One morning, Elsa was nearly 6 months pregnant. Her belly a gentle curve that Andrew softly kissed each night. She woke up early, determined to sort out the nursery. Tucked away in an old cardboard box labeled baby stuff, she found a list of names she had jotted down over the years: Lily Olivia, Samuel Joseph. Each name had meaning, a tiny reflection of the future she had dreamed of. That very evening, Andrew returned from a work dinner face taut. He approached Elsa cautiously. "Elle, we need to talk." Alarm bells rang in her head. "What is it?" He took a moment, meeting her gaze. "I promised Clarissa I'd help her find a new position at Harwell's London branch." The name Clarissa felt like a punch to Elsa's stomach. "Why are you still making promises to your mistress?" The bitterness in her voice came out sharper than broken glass. Andrew frowned. "She threatened to expose everything, potentially even twist the story to harm my career. I had to keep her appeased." Elsa felt her baby kick as though reacting to the tension. She placed a hand over her belly, silently urging calm. "Is that all?" "No," Andrew admitted, voice faltering. We talked about the baby. She asked what names we were considering, and I..." He paused, guilt flickering in his eyes. "She suggested Isabella for a girl, or Leonardo if it's a boy." Elsa's breath caught. Her mind whirled, struggling to process the enormous betrayal. Not only was Clarissa still in the picture, but Andrew had let his mistress weigh in on the baby's name, a name that was supposed to be decided by her and Andrew, alone out of love. The air felt suffocating. Elsa turned away. "Get out, Andrew," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You have no idea how many lines you've crossed." He tried to reach for her hand, but she snatched it away. A storm raged inside her, heartbreak, rage, helplessness. In the corner of the room, the list of baby names she had lovingly prepared lay crumpled and forgotten. The following weeks turned into a test of Elsa's resilience. Her prenatal appointments continued, her belly growing more prominent with each passing day. Yet emotionally, she felt hollowed out. Andrew had moved into the guest bedroom, though the tension between them was as thick as the August heat that seeped through the windows. She confided in Linda, who urged her to consult a lawyer, at least to understand her options if things came to a divorce. Elsa resisted at first. Her heart stubbornly clung to the idea of a unified family. But the night she overheard Andrew taking a call from Clarissa in hushed tones, she broke. The next morning, she visited Redwood & Associates, a reputable law firm recommended by a colleague. Walking through the polished marble foyer, Elsa felt like she was stepping into an alternate universe. Suits rushed about with urgent phone calls, and the air buzzed with quiet tension. In a modest conference room, she met James Redwood himself, a tall man with graying hair and kind eyes. She explained her situation in trembling words, feeling vulnerable and ashamed. James listened attentively, occasionally jotting down notes. "I've handled many cases like this," he said gently. "My job is to protect you and your child, no matter what you decide." He outlined the basics: property division, alimony, child support. The mention of a will came up organically. "Have you and Andrew discussed your estate planning?" James asked. "With a child on the way, it's often a good idea to revisit your will." Elsa hesitated. Many years ago, she and Andrew had drafted wills naming each other as beneficiaries, never imagining they might need to exclude one another. Yet now the thought festered. If Andrew was still entangled with Clarissa, could that woman someday benefit from Elsa's own assets, or, God forbid, have an influence over her child's inheritance? She left the law firm with a stack of paperwork, her mind spinning. The baby kicked, as if urging her to do something, to protect them both. Elsa gently rested her hand on her belly and whispered, "I will keep you safe." Despite the rocky marriage, Linda insisted on throwing a baby shower for Elsa. "It'll be good for you," she promised. "A chance to celebrate this baby. You need some joy, Elle." Elsa reluctantly agreed. The baby shower took place at Linda's suburban home, decorated with pastel balloons, pink and blue streamers, and a table overflowing with gifts. Outside, a warm breeze drifted through the trees, bringing the scent of freshly mowed grass. Friends and family arrived, placing thoughtful presents on a long table. Elsa tried her best to smile, tried to absorb the love and positivity swirling around her. Yet she couldn't help noticing Andrew moving from group to group, looking restless. He was never quite at ease these days, especially when the conversation inevitably turned to the baby. At one point, Linda began a party game where each guest suggested a baby name and pinned it to a board. Shouts of Emma, Noah, Sophia, and Ethan filled the room. Elsa felt a pang every time she heard a name. She forced a smile, watching Andrew shift his weight uncomfortably in the corner. Was he thinking of Clarissa's suggestions? As the game wound down, Andrew took the microphone Linda handed him, preparing to make a small speech. Elsa saw the anxious glint in his eyes. "First off, I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate our baby," Andrew began. "Elsa and I are so grateful for all the love and support. We're going through a tough time right now. But this baby is our light." He paused. "We've been discussing names and we've come up with a few ideas." Elsa's heart hammered. They had never come up with anything, unless Andrew meant Clarissa's suggestions. She stared at him silently, praying he would not utter them in front of all their friends. Andrew cleared his throat, glancing at her. "We're not quite sure yet," he corrected. "But we promise you'll all be the first to know when we decide." Relief coursed through Elsa's veins. Yet something about his hesitation bothered her. She nodded stiffly as applause broke out. The baby shower concluded on a relatively peaceful note, guests scattering as the sun set. Linda wrapped Elsa in a hug. "You are strong, Elle," she said softly. "You'll get through this. I'm here." Tears gathered in Elsa's eyes. She looked at Andrew loading gifts into the car, a figure who once was her entire world. She whispered back, "I hope so." Shortly after the baby shower, Andrew announced he'd be traveling again, for one last business trip. Elsa bristled, suspecting Clarissa might be involved, but she kept her thoughts to herself. Her focus remained on safeguarding her unborn child, physically and legally. While Andrew was away, Elsa visited Redwood and Associates again. This time, she asked James Redwood more specifically about changing her will. She wanted to name her sister, Maggie Johnson, as the child's guardian in the event of Elsa's passing. She also insisted that Andrew receive only a minimal share of her estate, ensuring the bulk went into a trust for her baby. James Redwood arched an eyebrow. "This is a significant shift from your existing arrangement," he noted. "Are you sure?" Elsa inhaled slowly, pressing a hand to her round belly. "Yes, I'm sure." The next morning, she woke up to an urgent text from Linda. "You need to see the news." Elsa turned on the TV, heart pounding. The local station aired a story about a leaked set of text messages and photos from Harwell Pharmaceuticals implicating Andrew Greenwood in an affair with a co-worker, Clarissa Henderson. Elsa's phone buzzed incessantly. Friends, co-workers, even distant relatives who suddenly remembered her number. Her gaze lingered on a photo of Andrew and Clarissa entwined on a hotel balcony. The anchor's solemn voice declared that the scandal might jeopardize an upcoming merger for Harwell. Their intimate business just got thrown into the public spotlight. Elsa's phone rang, Andrew calling from wherever he was. She let it ring, ignoring the frenzied pounding in her chest. If he needed her, he should have considered that before playing with fire. Andrew returned 3 days later, disheveled, desperate. He found Elsa in the nursery, quietly folding baby clothes into a small dresser. "Elsa," he said, voice raw, "we have to talk." She continued folding. "Is this about your media scandal or Clarissa Henderson's ultimatum?" He slumped against the doorframe, pinching the bridge of his nose. "She's threatening to sue Harwell for harassment if the company doesn't pay her a severance package. Her claims are exaggerated. She's painting me as if I coerced her into the relationship. My boss is furious. They might fire me if I can't contain the fallout." Elsa remained stoic, her heart racing. She felt strangely numb. "What does that have to do with me?" He looked at her, tears forming in his eyes. "Harwell's lawyers told me to resolve this quietly. They want me to settle with her out of court. They're prepared to pay a large sum, but they expect me to take care of Clarissa personally too. She's making demands." Elsa's spine stiffened. "Demands like picking our baby's name." "Again?" Andrew's eyes flicked downward. She's fixated on the idea. She's resentful that we're having a baby at all. It's twisted. But if I can't calm her down, I lose my job." A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the baby's new nightlight. Elsa's mind whirred. She felt the baby move within her, a gentle reminder of innocence amid the chaos. "I have no words for how disgusting this is." "Andrew," she finally said, "you made this mess. You'd better find a way out that doesn't involve sacrificing our child to your mistress's whims." He hung his head, appearing older, wearier than Elsa had ever seen him. "I'm so sorry, Elle," he whispered. She looked at him, tears filling her own eyes. "You broke my heart. You involved our baby in your lies. I'm sorry too. Sorry I ever believed we could fix this." Days crept by, overshadowed by gossip, legal meetings, and Andrew's frantic attempts to salvage his career. Elsa's belly felt heavier each day, not just from the baby, but from the burden of stress and heartbreak. Determined to protect her child, Elsa pressed forward with revising her will. She followed James Redwood's instructions, meticulously reviewing each clause with unwavering resolve. She made sure her sister Maggie Johnson was the primary guardian, and that any inheritance Andrew might receive would be stringently limited, subject to oversight by a court-appointed trustee who would protect the baby's interests if anything happened to Elsa. On a brisk Tuesday afternoon, she signed the finalized will. As her pen lifted from the paper, a strange calm settled over her, as though she had finally reclaimed a piece of her autonomy. She had no intention of dying, of course, but ensuring that Clarissa's manipulations wouldn't touch her child felt like a victory. That evening, Andrew noticed a packet of legal documents on the kitchen counter. "What's this?" he asked quietly. Elsa snatched the papers, pressing them against her chest. "None of your concern," he frowned. "Is that your will? Are you cutting me out?" She glared at him. "You gave the mother of your child every reason to doubt you. I'm looking out for our baby Andrew. You should be grateful I'm even allowing you any share." Andrew's face crumpled with guilt. "Elle, please. I can't lose everything." Elsa closed her eyes, tears threatening to overflow. "You already lost me," she said gently. "The only thing left for you to do is prove you're worthy of being our baby's father." Life, it seems, has impeccable timing. Just as Andrew's scandal at work reached a fever pitch, Elsa went into early labor 4 weeks ahead of schedule. It was midnight when the contractions started. Pain rippled through her abdomen like rolling thunder. She fumbled for her phone, calling Linda, who rushed over to drive her to the hospital. The baby wasn't due for another month. Fear gripped Elsa. Andrew was at an emergency corporate meeting he had left that afternoon, promising to finalize the Clarissa settlement by the next day. Elsa tried calling his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She texted him, "In labor. Come to the hospital." She received no reply. At St. Mary's maternity wing, Linda helped Elsa to the reception desk, her face tense with worry. Within minutes, nurses wheeled Elsa into a birthing suite. Dr. Harriet Liu arrived shortly after, swapping her coat for scrubs. "We'll take good care of you," the doctor reassured Elsa. "Let's see how far along you are." The contractions came in waves, each one more punishing than the last. Fear, pain, and heartbreak mingled as Elsa struggled to breathe through her sobs. The nurse placed an IV in her arm, hooking her up to monitors that tracked the baby's heartbeat, a steady lub-dub, like a candle in a gale. Hours later, exhaustion enveloped Elsa. She drifted in and out of delirium. All she could think about was whether Andrew would show up. Would he hold her hand, or had their marriage become so fractured that he'd miss the birth of their child? Just when Elsa thought she couldn't endure another contraction, Andrew burst through the door. Drenched in sweat tie-askew, he looked terrified. "Elsa." "I'm here," he panted, rushing to her side. "I'm sorry it took so long." She locked eyes with him, a tear sliding down her cheek. She wanted to scream at him for being late, for letting their marriage go to pieces. But another contraction seized her, and she cried out. In that moment, none of their drama mattered as much as bringing this baby safely into the world. The last few minutes of labor were a blur of agony, shouts, and urgent commands from Dr. Liu. When it was finally over, a shrill, piercing cry filled the room. Elsa felt an overwhelming rush of relief, love, and protectiveness. The baby, a girl, emerged from the chaos, eyes squeezed shut, lungs announcing her arrival to the world. Andrew hovered nearby, tears streaming down his face as he looked at their daughter. The nurses placed the tiny infant on Elsa's chest. Elsa stared at her daughter in awe, counting 10 little fingers, 10 little toes. The baby's eyes blinked open for a moment, revealing murky blue newborn irises. "She's perfect," Elsa whispered, voice cracking with emotion. Andrew gently touched the baby's head. "She looks just like you." He breathed. Time seemed to stand still. For that fragile moment, Elsa forgot. Clarissa forgot the heartbreak and let the rush of motherhood wash over her. She loved this baby, more than she had ever loved anything in her life. But reality seeped back in quickly. A nurse asked, "Have you chosen a name for the birth certificate?" Elsa's eyes locked onto Andrew's, remembering the horrifying notion that his mistress had suggested the baby's name. Andrew cleared his throat. "Elsa, you choose," he said, voice trembling. "It's your call." Elsa paused, pressing her lips together. Part of her wanted to use a name Clarissa would detest out of spite. But she banished that petty impulse. She looked at her baby's face so innocent. The name needed to be one filled with hope, not revenge. In a tear-laced whisper, she said, "Clara. I want to name her Clara Grace Greenwood." Andrew nodded, tears still shining in his eyes. "Clara," he echoed. "That's beautiful." Elsa rested her forehead gently against her daughter's tiny head, silently thanking God that Clarissa Henderson had no say in this precious life. Over the next day, Elsa rested in the hospital, recovering from the delivery. The baby Clara rested in a bassinet by her bedside, occasionally fussing for a feeding or diaper change. Andrew stayed in a chair, drifting in and out of sleep, tormented by the guilt that had become his constant companion. On the second day, Linda brought flowers, balloons, and a teddy bear. She joked about how Clara had the entire hospital staff wrapped around her little finger. Then Linda's face turned somber. "Elle, you should see this," she whispered, handing her phone to Elsa. An article on a local gossip website displayed the headline, "Corporate Scandal Deepens Mistress Claims Naming Rights Over Top Executive's Child." Clarissa Henderson had given an exclusive interview airing dirty laundry about Andrew's affair. She alleged that Andrew had promised she could name the baby if she didn't speak to the press. Elsa's stomach churned. She bit her lip to hold back tears. Andrew read over her shoulder, his face contorting. "I never... God, she's twisted everything. This is blackmail." Just then, Elsa's phone dinged with an email notification. It was from Clarissa Henderson herself. A vile, mocking message. "I hope you enjoy your new motherhood. Don't forget who nearly named your precious baby. Andrew won't escape me that easily." Attached was a copy of the settlement they'd been negotiating. Clarissa had apparently decided to go scorched earth, revealing everything in a public spectacle. Elsa felt a wave of anger so strong it threatened to knock her back. Clara whimpered, and Elsa gently rocked her bassinet, forcing herself to stay calm. Andrew sat at the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Elle." She stared at him. "You gave her this power, Andrew. I hope you remember that every day." Released from the hospital, Elsa brought Clara home, cradling her protectively. While Andrew hauled the car seat and diaper bag, Elsa stepped into their house, feeling a mixture of relief and dread. The nursery looked as serene as ever, with soft pastel walls and plush animals lining the shelves. But the tension in the house was palpable. Andrew tried to busy himself making tea, tidying up. Elsa fed Clara, marveling at her tiny features. For a few days they lived in a kind of fragile truce. Andrew handled midnight feedings, rocked Clara to sleep, and tried to shield Elsa from further stress. He rarely spoke of the legal fiasco or Clarissa, but Elsa knew it was boiling beneath the surface. Late one night, Andrew's phone buzzed. He had left it on the kitchen counter. Elsa pacing the living room with a fussy. Clara couldn't help but glance at the screen. Another message from Clarissa. "We're not done. You owe me." Elsa's heart thudded against her ribs, revulsion curling in her stomach. How much longer would this woman torment them? Clara wailed, reminding Elsa that her child depended on her. She scooped the baby into her arms, kissing her soft forehead. "It's okay, sweetheart," she murmured. "Mummy's here." She had changed her will to protect Clara's future. Legally, at least she felt safer. But emotionally, the threat of Clarissa felt like a venom that refused to dissipate. One afternoon, as Elsa napped upstairs with Clara, Andrew snooped around the study, searching for financial documents that might help him finalize the settlement with Clarissa. He stumbled upon a folder labeled Estate Plan, updated half-hidden under a stack of magazines. Curiosity ignited, and he opened it. Inside, he found a copy of Elsa's newly revised will. His eyes raked over the clauses, each one more devastating than the last. Primary guardian for Clara in the event of Elsa's death. Maggie Johnson. Financial trust for Clara. Andrew Greenwood, barred from accessing funds without explicit court approval. Distribution of Elsa's assets. Minimal spousal inheritance to Andrew, with conditions that effectively limited his control. His throat went dry. He had never felt more estranged from his wife, the woman he once adored. Frantic footsteps pounded upstairs. Elsa appeared, hair disheveled from sleep, Clara in her arms. She immediately saw the open folder. "Were you snooping?" she demanded, voice trembling with anger. Andrew clutched the file. "I just wanted to get the financial documents I need for Clarissa's settlement. I found this by accident." Elsa's cheeks flamed. "You had no right. I had every right." Andrew cut in, surprising them both with the hardness in his tone. "I'm your husband, the father of this child. Yet you plan to cut me out of our daughter's life if anything happens to you. Are you punishing me for my mistakes?" Her eyes sparked with fury. "My mistakes? You nearly gave our baby's name to your mistress. You gave that woman power in our marriage. And you're calling me unfair?" Clara began to cry, unsettled by the raised voices. Elsa rocked her gently, tears gathering in her own eyes. Andrew exhaled shakily. I can't lose you both. I know I messed up, but please give me a chance to make it right." She blinked away tears, exhaustion etched into her features. "I've given you every chance already. The next steps are yours to figure out." Andrew's job hung in the balance. Clarissa's demands growing more unreasonable by the day. When Harwell Pharmaceuticals threatened to terminate Andrew unless he resolved the scandal, he felt his world crumbling. One crisp morning, he suited up and left for a meeting with Clarissa at Redwood & Associates' neutral ground, with both of their lawyers present. Elsa stayed home with Clara, her anxiety spiking. She remembered how Andrew had insisted he was going to fix everything. But could she trust him? Hours later, Andrew trudged through the front door looking pale as a ghost. Elsa rushed to him, heart pounding. "What happened?" He sank into a chair, loosening his tie. "It's done," Clarissa settled. "I'll keep my job, but there's a heavy financial blow. Our savings will take a hit." He paused, swallowing hard. She demanded an apology in writing. She demanded that I publicly acknowledge our relationship as consensual so she couldn't be accused of blackmail. Elsa frowned. You signed that. Andrew shrugged, eyes hollow. My hands were tied. It was sign or lose everything. We can move on now, though. Elsa's gaze flicked to Clara, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. Moving on won't be easy. He nodded regret, thick in his expression. I'd do anything to erase what I did. She looked at him for a long moment, uncertain how to respond. The hush in the house felt deafening, broken only by Clara's soft breathing. Perhaps the final chapter of Clarissa's interference had just been written, but the damage left behind was immeasurable. In the weeks that followed, Andrew poured his energies into fatherhood. He woke for late-night feedings, changed diapers, and rocked Clara while softly singing lullabies. Elsa watched his transformation with cautious hope. He even agreed to couples therapy despite his initial reluctance. Their counselor, Dr. Beatrice Holmes, ran a tight ship. During sessions, she delved into the depths of their emotional scars. Elsa recounted how betrayed she felt when Andrew allowed Clarissa to choose the baby's name. Andrew broke down, admitting his weakness and fear of losing the mistress's silence. Dr. Holmes posed tough questions about intimacy, trust, and the future. Many sessions ended in tears, yet slowly cracks of light began to appear through the darkness. Andrew recognized that his fling had been less about love and more about ego and boredom. Elsa grappled with the realization that she had put Andrew on a pedestal, ignoring the faults that grew like cracks in a dam. Sometimes, after therapy, Andrew cooked dinner while Elsa rested. They managed small conversations without erupting into shouting matches. The will remained a sensitive topic, but Elsa held her ground. Andrew never asked her to change it. Perhaps he realized she had good reason to protect Clara's interests. One evening, Andrew tentatively approached Elsa in the nursery. She was nursing Clara, who was nearly 3 months old now, with soft brown hair that curled at the ends. She's beautiful, he said, voice thick with emotion. Elsa nodded, pressing her lips to Clara's forehead. Yes, she is. Andrew lingered, picking at the thread of his shirt. I'm not sure how to say this, but thank you for naming her Clara. I know you could have done something spiteful, but you didn't. You chose a lovely name. A wistful smile touched Elsa's lips. She's innocent. She deserves a name born of love. He inhaled slowly. I know it might be too late for me, but I love you, Elsa. I want us to be a real family. She sighed, tears glistening. I'm not sure if it's too late, Andrew. I'm too tired to know. But I do know we have a child together, and we'll do our best by her, no matter what happens between us. Time marched on with the unstoppable force of daily life. Clara turned 6 months, then 9. Each milestone, her first laugh, her first attempt at crawling, brought Elsa and Andrew together in fleeting moments of shared wonder. Their therapy continued, though progress was slow. Trust once broken never returns in an instant. But Andrew was determined to prove himself. He closed off all contact with Clarissa, refused any new travel unless absolutely necessary, and even took a step back at work to focus on family. He also paid back the settlement money from his bonus, ensuring that they weren't strapped for household finances. During Clara's first birthday, a small party in their backyard, Elsa spotted Andrew in the midst of children's laughter balloons and a little sash cake for Clara. He wore a carefree smile she hadn't seen in ages. That night, after everyone left, he and Elsa cleaned up together. By the time the yard was tidy, The sun had set, and Clara was fast asleep. Elsa turned to Andrew. "You've been different." "In a good way," she said softly. He blinked, hope stirring in his eyes. "I'm trying, because you and Clara are worth every effort." She weighed her words carefully. "I haven't changed my will back. I need you to understand. It's not about revenge. It's about security." He placed a hand over hers, warmth radiating from his touch. "I understand," he said quietly. "And I'll keep working until you trust me enough to change it, if you ever do." She looked at him, finally allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. "That might take a long time," she whispered. Andrew nodded, tears brimming. "I'll wait." Months after Clarissa's settlement, the Greenwood household had found a shaky new normal. Andrew took on more fatherly duties. Elsa maintained part-time work from home, balancing projects with caring for Clara. Life felt stable. Then one chilly autumn morning, an envelope arrived, no return address. Elsa opened it cautiously. Andrew and Elsa. "You might believe your life is perfect now, but secrets have a way of re-emerging. Andrew. You owe me more than a settlement. Don't get too comfortable." See. Elsa's blood ran cold. She handed the note to Andrew. His face whitened. "What is she trying to do?" "We have a legal settlement. She can't come after me again." Elsa pressed her lips together. "She can still torment us psychologically, apparently." They reached out to James Redwood for advice. He assured them that legally Clarissa had no grounds to demand anything further. Yet the letter's threat loomed over them like a dark cloud. Would Clarissa continue to haunt their marriage? Or was this her final hiss before disappearing for good? That night, as Clara slept soundly, Elsa found Andrew sitting in the living room staring blankly at the TV. She sank onto the couch beside him. "We can't live in fear," she murmured. He exhaled slowly. "I'll never forgive myself if she hurts you or Clara. But I think this is just another attempt at manipulation. She has no real hold over us now." Elsa nodded, leaning her head against Andrew's shoulder for the first time in what felt like forever. They sat like that, for a long time, silent, but not alone. While Clarissa's letter rattled them, it also acted as a catalyst. Andrew and Elsa talked more openly than ever about how they ended up in such a mess, how isolation and unspoken resentments became the breeding ground for infidelity. Therapy sessions with Dr. Holmes grew more intense, yet also more fruitful. Elsa, meanwhile, blossomed in her role as a mother. Clara turned into a bright, giggling toddler with an inquisitive mind. Every time Elsa heard her daughter's laughter, she felt a surge of gratitude for the choice she made at the hospital to name her child. From the heart, not from vengeance or outside interference. Bit by bit, Elsa found herself acknowledging Andrew's sincere effort. She noticed how he never flinched when she brought up the subject of the affair, or how he no longer shielded his phone. For a while she tested him unintentionally, glancing at his screen or phone logs. He never protested, never hid anything. Trust began to germinate in the fertile ground of honesty. One evening after Clara was in bed, Andrew emerged from the study with a small envelope, cheeks flushed with nerves. He handed it to Elsa. Inside was a note describing his intentions to place additional funds into Clara's trust unasked. He wrote, "I can't erase the past, but I can invest in our future. This is my way of showing you I'm serious about being a father you and Clara can rely on. Andrew." Tears welled in Elsa's eyes. She saw genuine remorse, an active attempt to heal what had once been hopelessly shattered. By the time Clara turned 2, the Greenwood home had grown quieter, more stable. The constant dread that once lingered like soak in the walls had thinned. Arguments were rare, replaced by careful conversations and small gestures of healing. Elsa no longer walked on eggshells, and Andrew no longer seemed like a man hiding in plain sight. It was Elsa who suggested they visit James Redwood's office again. This time she didn't come alone or in secret. Andrew walked beside her holding Clara's hand as they entered the same firm where Elsa had once rewritten her will out of fury and heartbreak. But today wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity, protection, and yes, maybe a small step toward rebuilding something that resembled a partnership. James Redwood greeted them with a warm smile and firm handshake. "Back again, Mrs. Greenwood," he said, nodding. "Or should I say, Mr. and Mrs. Greenwood?" Elsa smiled faintly. "We're still writing our ending," she replied. They sat in the familiar glass-walled office sunlight, pouring in over the leather-bound law books and dark oak furniture. Clara played on the carpet with a small stuffed giraffe, oblivious to the heavy conversation unfolding above her. James reviewed the proposed amendments to Elsa's will. In the new version, Andrew would no longer be entirely excluded. In the event of Elsa's untimely death, Andrew would share partial guardianship of Clara, but Maggie Johnson, Elsa's steadfast sister, would still hold primary oversight. The trust fund remained ironclad, impenetrable to anyone's ambition or mistake. Clara's future was untouchable. When the final signatures were made, James carefully slid the documents into a fireproof cabinet. Andrew turned to Elsa, his eyes softer than she'd seen in years. "Thank you," he said, voice low, "not just for changing the will, but for letting me show you I can be better." Elsa stared at him for a long moment, before glancing toward the corner of the office where a potted fern basked in the sunlight. It was the same plant she'd noticed 2 years ago, quietly thriving in its modest ceramic pot. It hadn't withered. It hadn't demanded attention. It had simply endured, growing leaf by leaf. "We're not perfect," Elsa said softly, "but maybe we don't need to be. Maybe what we need is just the will to keep growing." Andrew reached for her hand. She let him hold it this time, her grip tentative but real. The scar of betrayal would never fully vanish. It would always be part of their story. But with each day of effort, with each coup from Clara, each sunrise shared over quiet coffee, Elsa felt something unexpected. Not just forgiveness, but renewal. They left the office not as the couple who had once dreamed under a willow tree, nor as the fractured pair who had battled over trust and betrayal. They left as 2 people who chose again and again to show up for their daughter, and maybe in time for each other. The rain tapped gently against the living room windows, a soft rhythm that seemed to echo the stillness inside. Clara, now a bubbly toddler with a halo of unruly brown curls, toddled through the house with a photo album clutched in her tiny hands. She'd recently discovered her baby pictures and squealed with delight every time she saw her own face, wide-eyed, gummy-smiled, wrapped in pastel blankets. Elsa lounged on the couch, sipping tea, as Clara climbed into her lap, still flipping pages. Andrew joined them a moment later, with a bowl of apple slices, setting it down, before settling on the other side of the couch. It had been over 3 years since the worst storm of their lives, and the Greenwood household, once fractured by betrayal, had begun to resemble something almost sacred. It wasn't perfect. The shadows of the past lingered, but so did the light of forgiveness. I was thinking. Elsa began, watching Clara point to a picture of her newborn self with a gurgling giggle. Maybe we could do a new family portrait. A real one this time. Andrew looked up, surprised. You mean all three of us? She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. The portraits we took before Clara was born. They feel like someone else's memories now. We've lived through too much. It's time we captured who we are now, not who we were pretending to be. Andrew swallowed hard. I'd like that, he said, reaching over to brush a curl from Clara's forehead. We're not the same people. Maybe that's a good thing. Elsa looked at him, this man, who had once broken her in ways she never thought she'd recover from, and yet here he was. He had stayed, not just physically but emotionally. He had rebuilt himself into someone more aware, more humble, more father than he'd ever been, husband. And she had changed too. Gone was the woman who had lived quietly in someone else's shadow, trusting blindly. In her place stood a mother with a steel backbone who had rewritten her will not out of bitterness, but out of love for her child, who had dared to hope again, not for fairy tales, but for quiet, hard-earned joy. That evening, as the rain turned to a fine mist, Elsa stepped outside with Clara wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up at the sky, grey but peaceful. Life wasn't about avoiding storms. It was about learning how to dance in the drizzle and find warmth after the cold. Andrew came out moments later and wrapped his arm around them. Clara, sleepy now, nestled her head into Elsa's shoulder. Whatever happens next, Elsa murmured, we choose it together. Andrew nodded. Together. There would always be whispers from the past. But the future, that was still unwritten. And for the first time, in a long time, Elsa was ready to pick up the pen again. Betrayal, heartbreak, and redemption. Elsa Greenwood's journey was a tumultuous testament to the power of resilience. When Andrew's affair threatened to tear their marriage apart, Elsa's fury drove her to rewrite her will, cutting him off from the life they once built together. Yet the birth of their daughter Clara planted new seeds of hope. Through therapy, forgiveness, and unwavering commitment to their child's well-being, they discovered that some relationships, though scarred, can still heal. Today, Elsa and Andrew navigate life one small step at a time, cherishing the miracle they created together. Their story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, love can endure if we choose to nurture it. If you enjoyed this dramatic tale of betrayal, intrigue, and ultimate redemption, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating real-life stories. Your support helps us bring you more deep dives into the hidden corners of human emotion and resilience. Thank you for watching. The winter wind bit through her threadbare coat, but Sarah Donovan barely noticed. Strolling past neon-lit windows, she couldn't ignore the relentless ache in her belly, an ache caused by hunger and the 6-month child she carried. Shivering on the sidewalk, she glanced up at a massive TV screen, blaring the nightly financial news. There, beaming under the bright studio lights, was a man she once promised to love forever. William Donovan, her husband, a multimillionaire, famous, admired, while she trembled in the cold. Her heart twisted. How had their world turned so cruel? She had nothing, and he seemed to have it all. Sarah Donovan had known hunger before, but never like this. On that frigid evening, the wind seemed to slice through layers of her clothing directly into her bones. She pulled the sides of her coat together, in a desperate attempt to keep warm. Through the swirling snowflakes, she could just make out the bright, flashing monitors in Times Square. On the largest screen, a familiar face, William Donovan, appeared. His name scrolled in large letters. Tech Investor of the Year. Applause thundered behind him in the recorded clip. Brightly lit, he was addressing a hall filled with wealth power and cameras from CNN, CNBC, and local networks. Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away. That face, the strong jaw, the slight smile that once reassured her everything would be all right. Now he looked polished, exuding confidence. She hadn't seen him in person for almost a year. Her chest clenched with memories of the day he walked out, arguments about money and ambition overshadowing their love. She'd tried to reason with him to support him, but each conversation ended in a new fight, culminating in the shocking decision he would succeed alone. The flickering billboard cut to a montage of images, William shaking hands with Mark Cuban at a tech conference, then introducing a pioneering piece of software in Silicon Valley. Sarah saw glimpses of glamorous parties William in a tailored tuxedo, accompanied by men and women she had never met. The talk show host concluded the segment by proclaiming, "William Donovan, America's newest business sensation." Then the screen blinked to a car commercial. Just like that, he vanished into the night. Sarah blinked back tears. There was a time William's arms had been her warm refuge, promising they'd face every storm side by side. And now, pregnant with his child, she walked alone on icy sidewalks, scrounging for a place to sleep. She was determined not to cry, but her emotions overwhelmed her as she gazed up at the ironically beautiful Christmas lights decorating the city. By all appearances, the world around her was celebrating, and she was surviving. Barely. She pressed a hand against her abdomen, feeling the slightest kick. "I'll take care of you," she whispered to the life inside her. It was a promise she intended to keep, though at that moment she wasn't sure how. When she turned away from the screen and stumbled onward, her foot snagged on a piece of broken pavement. A stinging pain shot through her ankle, and she nearly collapsed. She bit down a cry, scanning the crowd for help, but passers-by, preoccupied with their own rush of errands and holiday shopping, scarcely gave her a glance. That's what life had become after she left the small studio in which she and William once lived, alone, invisible. Sarah's pride was bruised, but she refused to crumble. She passed by a bakery. Through the window, the smell of fresh bread made her stomach twist. She had to preserve her last dollar for the cheapest motel, a place with peeling wallpaper and barely functioning plumbing, but at least it was indoors. She stepped inside, bought a small roll and devoured it in 3 bites. Outside again, the wind roared, intensifying the city's clamor. Still clutching her abdomen, she decided that tomorrow everything had to change. She would find a job. She'd scour the city for help. She would not let her child enter this world with nothing but sorrow. But for tonight, she needed a place to rest, a place that wasn't some abandoned corner or shadowed alley. Even if it cost her last few dollars, she had to prioritize the safety of the life inside her. As Sarah walked away from the mesmerizing screens of Times Square, one thought pulsed in her mind. Her husband, the man she had once loved beyond reason, was thriving. And here she was, pregnant and alone. Could the chasm between them grow any wider? Long before he was the darling of business magazines and tech summits, William Donovan was a daydreamer, writing code in the corner of the local university library. Sarah remembered the first time she saw him. It was her sophomore year, and she was majoring in English literature at Columbia. The library's back table had been her favorite spot, quiet, perfect for reading. She noticed him a junior in computer science, leaning over a laptop with an exasperated scowl. Curious and drawn by the intellectual frenzy in his eyes, she'd asked, "Need any help?" Although Sarah barely understood advanced programming, the question sparked the first real conversation they ever had. William's exhausted face broke into the shyest of smiles, and she recalled thinking, "He's kind of cute under all that stress." They chatted about his class project, an algorithm for data compression. Sarah confessed she was more comfortable discussing Shakespeare than software, and he teased her gently. From that moment on, they were a constant presence in each other's lives. Their connection seemed effortless. He awakened her interest in technology's potential. She introduced him to literary classics, weaving in metaphors about love and ambition. They started dating by Christmas break of that year, with sweet, simple moments, late-night walks around campus, scrounging for cheap coffee in the student lounge, trying out new ramen spots around Manhattan. They were two dreamers, William longing to found a tech startup that would revolutionize how people shared data, and Sarah hoping to become a novelist. The future seemed limitless. She could still feel the way he used to grasp her hand whenever she doubted herself, as if to say, "We'll get through anything." Yet as graduation approached, financial stresses haunted them. William, determined to compete in the tech world, pitched his software to small investors, but faced constant rejection. Sarah, meanwhile, struggled to get traction for her short stories, or even land a decent internship. Their families offered little financial support. William's parents, proud owners of a modest real estate business in upstate New York, expected him to follow a more traditional path and often expressed skepticism toward his entrepreneurial obsession. Sarah's mother, whose chronic illness drained the family's savings, couldn't help beyond a few encouraging phone calls. When they got married in a humble civil ceremony right after graduation, they were brimming with hope. Their honeymoon was a short weekend, spent in a budget motel near Niagara Falls, the only getaway they could afford. But they didn't care. What mattered was their shared devotion. They returned to New York City, renting a cheap studio apartment in Queens. William coded into the late hours, while Sarah worked as a barista by day and scribbled short stories by night. Their love burned like a bright flame until cracks began to form. William became consumed with success, obsessed, really. Each failed pitch to an investor sent him into a silent downward spiral that led to outbursts. Sarah tried to reassure him that failure was part of the journey, but her optimism only irritated him. As months dragged on, the bills piled up. William grew desperate, dabbling in risky deals with shady angel investors. They had endless arguments about money. When success finally arrived nearly 2 years into their marriage, with a major investor, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, buying into William's new software idea, Sarah hoped that would ease the tension. But ironically, it only magnified their differences. William was suddenly thrust into corporate meetings, traveling across the country, networking with high-profile entrepreneurs. Invitations to flashy events replaced their quiet dinners. He no longer came home with cheap takeout. He was gone most nights, presumably in boardrooms or at fancy parties. Sarah felt him slipping away. A year passed in that swirl of success, and Sarah was left behind, often alone, in their now upscale condo near Central Park. William's time was devoured by business calls and conferences on the West Coast. When he was home, he was distracted, fidgety, unwilling to share stories of his day. She remembered their final argument vividly. She'd asked him to spend one evening with her to reconnect. He retorted that she had no clue how hard he worked to keep them afloat, how she should be more grateful. That night ended with William storming out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. He never came back. Days became weeks. Sarah's calls and texts went unanswered. Soon bank notices arrived explaining how William had switched all joint accounts to his name alone. Sarah had no income. Worse yet, 2 months later, she discovered she was pregnant. Fear overrode any bitterness, but desperation set in. Rent soared, her barista job didn't pay enough, and she could no longer afford the condo. Before long, she was forced onto the street. She tried contacting William's PR office, but the line always went to a polite assistant who left her on hold until she hung up in frustration. Now, witnessing his face on the giant screen in Times Square, that entire whirlwind of a past threatened to engulf her. She reminded herself of one vow she'd made, standing in that battered apartment with an eviction notice in hand. I will survive and protect this child. If the father refused to care, she would find a way. She would not become just another nameless tragedy in the city's underbelly. Morning brought little relief from the cold. Sarah woke on a narrow, squeaky bed in the cheapest motel she could find. The heater rattled uselessly, barely keeping the air above freezing. She had about $15 left, enough for a couple of cheap sandwiches, maybe bus fare if she wanted to head to the next shelter. But Sarah was stubborn. She believed there had to be something better. She packed her meager belongings, a change of clothes, her worn copy of Emily Dickinson's poems, a phone with a cracked screen that almost never picked up a signal. Everything fit into a single bag. Every step outside felt like walking through a wind tunnel. She knew she had to find help soon. A pregnant woman living on the streets was a tragedy waiting to happen. She headed to the nearest public library, an older building with classical columns, seeking warmth and free internet to look for job openings. Inside, near the community bulletin board, she found a flyer advertising a free women's shelter in Brooklyn. It promised hot meals counseling and prenatal support. She tore off the address tab. This might be my best chance, she thought, shoulders relaxing slightly for the first time in days. She hopped on a bus, ignoring the pitying looks from a couple of other passengers. Upon arrival, she found the shelter nestled in a quiet neighborhood. The building was large, with peeling paint and sagging steps, but the warmth she felt when she walked inside was immediate and comforting. A friendly volunteer named Rebecca greeted her with a kind smile. After scribbling her name on a form, Sarah was shown to a cramped but clean room shared with 3 other women. Each cot had fresh blankets and a small side table. Meals are served at 7 in the morning and 6 in the evening, Rebecca explained. We also have prenatal checkups every Friday with a visiting nurse from Bellevue Hospital. Sarah nearly cried with relief. A medical checkup was a blessing. She hadn't seen a doctor since learning of her pregnancy. Rebecca chatted with her for a while, asking about her situation. Though Sarah felt hesitant to reveal too much, there was something about Rebecca's gentle nature that encouraged honesty. She admitted her husband had left, that he was well off, and that she had nowhere else to go. Rebecca listened, never judging, then simply patted Sarah's shoulder. You'll be safe here. You'll get back on your feet. I'm here if you need anything, Rebecca offered. Those words of encouragement did more for Sarah's spirit than anything had in months. That first night in the shelter, Sarah lay in the dark, hearing the muffled snores of her roommates. She felt a faint flutter within her baby moving. I'm not alone, she reminded herself. This life inside her gave her purpose. She recalled an old Emily Dickinson line. She loved something about hope being a thing with feathers. That hope had perched in her soul, refusing to abandon her even in life's darkest corners. The next morning she joined the breakfast queue. The food wasn't luxurious oatmeal, a banana-powdered orange juice, but it was warm and nourishing. Some of the residents eyed her suspiciously. They were all at different points in life's struggles, yet in their gazes, Sarah sensed a silent camaraderie that had been missing in her life for so long. As she sat down to eat, Rebecca joined her. "We have a job support program," Rebecca said, her voice quiet. "You'd get help writing a resume, searching for openings, maybe training. I know it can be tough to find something with no stable address, but we can try." Sarah nodded eagerly. "That would be great," she replied, swallowing a surge of gratitude. She was ready to do anything office cleaning retail, anything that would help her earn enough for a deposit on a small apartment. But as she scrolled through job listings later that day, a rerun of a business show played on the shelter's TV in the lounge. They were discussing William Donovan again. A celebrity investor, Mark Cuban, had praised William's entrepreneurial drive, suggesting he was the future of American tech. Hearing the news anchor casually mention her husband's name felt like a punch to the gut. He was more successful than she'd even imagined. She took a deep breath, forced herself to look away from the screen and told herself, "This is my life now, and I'm not giving up." She wasn't sure if she hated him, missed him, or simply wished none of this had happened. All she knew was that she had to survive, and she would on her own terms. At precisely 9 in the morning the following Friday, Sarah waited in a makeshift exam room set up in the shelter's converted rec hall. Worn curtains partitioned the space. The volunteer nurse, Ms. Francis, bustled in, setting down a bag of medical supplies. She was a short, no-nonsense woman with bright, reassuring eyes. "How are you feeling, dear?" Ms. Francis asked, washing her hands and snapping on latex gloves. Sarah hesitated. She had been ignoring the dull ache in her lower back, the bouts of nausea that still came and went, and the constant exhaustion. "Better now that I have a safe place to sleep," she admitted. Ms. Francis nodded, taking Sarah's vitals, measuring her belly, and listening carefully with a Doppler for the baby's heartbeat. The rhythmic whoosh-whoosh filled the air, and Sarah's eyes grew misty. This was the first time she'd heard her child's heartbeat. So strong, she thought, pressing a hand to her mouth. "No major concerns right now?" Ms. Francis informed, giving a small smile. "But you need to be mindful of your diet. Get as much protein and healthy foods as you can. And rest. Stress can harm the baby too." Sarah almost laughed bitterly. Stress was the only thing she had in abundance. But she forced a bright nod. Ms. Francis noted that Sarah would need a formal medical file at a hospital soon in case of early labor or complications. "We'll coordinate that," Ms. Francis added. "In the meantime, do you have any support person for prenatal care? A family member or—" her voice trailed. "My husband's not around," Sarah said, swallowing a lump in her throat. "No other family in the city." The nurse's expression turned sympathetic. "Well, you're not alone. We're here to help." After the checkup, Sarah felt slightly more confident. The baby was healthy. That knowledge was the anchor she clung to. She spent her afternoons in the job support program, brushing up her typing skills, practicing interview responses with a counselor named Janet. Her English degree helped. She applied for positions as a receptionist, an editorial assistant, or even a part-time tutor. Most responses came back negative. Employers didn't want someone with an unstable address, or they required advanced certifications. But Sarah persevered. Days turned into weeks. The bulge in her belly became more pronounced, and so did the heaviness in her heart. She tried to keep track of the outside world, scanning newspapers in the library for job ads, occasionally glimpsing headlines about William Donovan's skyrocketing success. One day the paper featured a photograph of him leaving a high-end restaurant with a tall, elegant woman wearing designer clothes. The photo caption labeled her as Madeline Ashford, potential new business partner. Sarah's throat tightened. She glanced at her own reflection in the library window. Rumpled coat eyes ringed with fatigue. If William had moved on personally, was she even a memory? That evening her back pains grew sharper, and she realized with dread that her pregnancy was entering a stage where she would soon need consistent medical care. She couldn't keep skipping checkups or rely solely on the shelter nurse. She also worried about finances, diapers, baby clothes, a crib. Where would she get them? She'd joined a waiting list for government assistance, but bureaucracy moved at a snail's pace. Sarah found herself weeping some nights, the future an ominous shadow. Yet each morning she recalled the baby's heartbeat, reminding herself there was no choice but forward. One particularly cold day, she forced herself to walk 3 miles in the slushy streets to follow up on a potential receptionist position. She arrived soaked and shivering. Her hopes rose when the manager, a kindly older woman, offered a temporary role answering phones at a small publishing company. The pay was minimal, but it was something. She'd start Monday. Sarah left the office hugging a folder of paperwork and feeling a glimmer of pride. I'm making progress. When she returned to the shelter, though, she found Rebecca pale-faced in the hallway. We need to talk, Rebecca said quietly, leading Sarah to a corner. Apparently an acquaintance of Sarah's had come by looking for her, a man with slicked-back hair and an expensive suit. He left a business card that read, Donovan Enterprises. Sarah's heart hammered. She stared at the card, the swirling black and gold letters. Did he say anything she managed to ask? Just that he needed to speak with you regarding a personal matter. Sarah's mind whirled. Could it be William's lawyer? One of his personal aides? Did William know she was pregnant? She never thought he would actually search for her. A swirl of anger, fear, and a strange residual hope filled her. She resolved to call the number. Maybe it was finally time for a confrontation, a reckoning. She just didn't know what to expect. Sarah picked up a battered pay-as-you-go phone, a small victory from the shelter's resource program, and stared at the business card. It bore a name, Charles Whitmore, Legal Counsel. She dialed with trembling fingers, listening to the ring on the other end. Anxiety swelled. Finally, a crisp male voice answered. Charles Whitmore speaking. This is Sarah Donovan. You left your card at the shelter. Her voice sounded small. He cleared his throat. Ah, Mrs. Donovan. I'm glad you reached out. Mr. Donovan, your husband would like to set up a meeting. It's in regard to finances and certain changes to his estate. A chill ran down her spine. Was this about a divorce? She almost panicked at the thought, but she maintained composure. Why now? She asked. The question came out bitterly. Ma'am, I only have instructions to coordinate your meeting. Could you come by the Donovan Enterprises office downtown on 5th Avenue? Sarah hesitated. I can't. Not immediately. She had a job orientation. Soon she had no decent clothes and no money for a taxi. Shall we say, next Tuesday at noon, he pressed. We'd be happy to reimburse your transportation. Mr. Donovan understands how difficult the city can be. He specifically requested you meet in a neutral setting. Sarah's anger flared at the paternalistic tone, but caution prevailed. All right. Tuesday. She hung up, heart thudding. William wants to meet. Part of her raged that he would drag her into some legal affair after all this time. Another part, small yet insistent, felt relief that maybe he would acknowledge their baby, maybe do the right thing, and at least provide child support. Tuesday came quickly, and Sarah found herself rummaging through the shelter's donated clothing closet, picking out a modest black dress and a coat that fit snugly over her belly. Rebecca offered to do her hair in a simple bun. As she left, 6 women in the shelter wished her luck, though they knew only that she was meeting her ex. The Donovan Enterprises office towered over Fifth Avenue with mirrored glass windows. Sarah approached it anxiously, ignoring the doorman's raised eyebrow when she walked in. The marble-floored lobby gleamed, and well-dressed professionals hurried past, exuding an air of wealth. A statue of William's trademark D logo was on display near the elevators, a testament to his success. Charles Whitmore, a tall, slim man with graying hair, emerged from behind the reception area and greeted her with a polite bow. "Mrs. Donovan." "Right this way," he said, leading her to a plush conference room overlooking the city skyline. Soft leather chairs, a polished mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Central Park. Everything screamed opulence. She perched on a chair, feeling out of place. Moments later, the door opened. In walked William Donovan. He wore a tailored charcoal suit and stepped forward with a hesitant smile. Sarah's throat constricted at the sight of him. He looked the same, yet different, older, more confident. She stood instinctively, placing a protective hand on her abdomen. If he noticed her rounded belly, he didn't show any immediate reaction. "Sarah," he said quietly, as though testing the word. He paused, his eyes flicking to her stomach, then back to her face. "Thank you for coming. I didn't realize you were, are you?" She inhaled sharply. "Pregnant," she finished. "Yes. For nearly 6 months." A fleeting expression of shock, maybe guilt, flashed in his eyes. "I didn't know," he said. You didn't tell me." Anger boiled in her. "I tried. You cut all contact. You walked out. And..." Her voice trembled. She clenched her fists. "You were too busy with your empire to pick up the phone." He exhaled, looking pained. "I'm sorry. I truly am." He sank into the chair opposite her, rubbing his temples. "I messed up. I realize that now. I've been going through a lot, but it's no excuse." She eyed him warily, uncertain if this was genuine remorse or a performance. "So why am I here?" "Did you need me to sign divorce papers? Is that it?" William shook his head vigorously. No. That's not it at all." He looked at Charles, who stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mr. Donovan asked me to assist in drafting an arrangement to provide you with financial support, enough to cover all prenatal care, childbirth expenses, and living costs. In addition, there's a trust fund he'd like to establish for the child." Sarah felt a wave of conflicting emotions, relief that there was some practical solution, indignation that he thought money alone could fix everything, and a flicker of hope. "What about us?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Our marriage?" William gazed at her, eyes clouded. "I want to help you. And our child. I know I can't change the past, but I can at least do right by you now." He hesitated, swallowing hard. "As for us, Sarah, I can't pretend I haven't caused terrible damage. I don't expect you to forgive me instantly." But maybe with time, she wasn't sure how to respond. It felt like they were strangers. She realized she was trembling. He's acknowledging the child, she told herself. That was step one. Charles laid out documents referencing monthly allowances coverage for medical bills, etc. The amounts were staggering. Sarah had never seen such figures. She could live comfortably, rent an apartment, and never worry about basic needs again. But guilt gnawed at her. Should she accept this? She eyed William, her voice wavering. "Why now?" she asked. "Why not?" Before William's face was taut. "When I saw you disappeared from our condo and heard rumors you were struggling, I tried to locate you, but I was overwhelmed with expansions, new deals, then the pandemic of responsibilities. I kept putting it off." He inhaled, pained. "That was wrong. I realized I couldn't move forward, knowing you might be suffering. You deserved better." "Damn right I did," Sarah muttered, tears burning her eyes. She glanced at the legal documents. They were a band-aid solution. Maybe it was an answer for the baby. Yet a single question lingered. Could William Donovan possibly be part of my life again? She didn't sign anything that day, telling Charles she needed time to think. William offered to call her a car, but she declined, wanting to walk back to the shelter to clear her head. He handed her a card with his personal cell number, the only item that felt remotely intimate. She left the grand building uncertain whether she was stepping toward salvation or heartbreak. That evening, Sarah returned to the shelter in a daze. She found Rebecca in the kitchen, dishing out bowls of soup to the residents. Feeling the weight of the day pressing down on her, Sarah pulled Rebecca aside and recounted the surreal encounter with William Donovan. She showed her the paperwork, baffling sums of money that could turn her life around. "That's... wow," Rebecca breathed, flipping through the pages. "I've never seen so many zeros on a support agreement." She paused. "So what are you going to do?" Sarah sighed, sinking into a chair. "I don't know. Part of me feels like taking this money is the only logical choice. The baby deserves a stable life, not a mother stuck in a shelter. But another part," she rubbed her belly. "I'm scared he's just trying to buy off his conscience. If I sign, do I lose my dignity?" Rebecca placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "It's not about dignity, Sarah. It's about providing for your child and yourself. You've sacrificed so much. You deserve some security. That doesn't mean you have to let him back in your life unless you want to." Those words calmed Sarah slightly, but her mind remained unsettled. She recalled her once blazing love with William, how they'd giggle over cheap pizza late at night, how she'd fallen asleep on his shoulder while he read his code aloud. Is that man still in there, beneath the polished millionaire facade, she wondered. A part of her yearned for closure or even a chance at reconciliation. But the hurt was fresh, the betrayal still raw. The baby's well-being, however, was paramount. That same night, she carefully reviewed the documents, scribbling notes and questions in the margins, wanting to ensure she wasn't signing away any rights inadvertently. If William was sincere in his remorse, maybe she could start by accepting financial support, then see if anything else could be salvaged later. She set the papers aside, resolved to meet with Charles again in a few days. Meanwhile, Sarah's new part-time receptionist job started. She commuted by bus, then hopped the subway to a modest building in Midtown, stepping into the small publishing house. The environment was busy, yet casual stacks of manuscripts, coffee mugs on every desk, editors arguing about grammar. On her first day, she answered phones, directed visitors, and fetched coffee for staff meetings. By lunchtime, she was exhausted, but a gentle wave of triumph swelled inside her. "I'm working. I'm making strides." During a brief break, she scrolled her phone and saw a new message from William. "Please let me know if you have any questions about the agreement. Also, I hope you're doing well." That was all. So formal, yet tinged with a cautious warmth. Sarah stared at the screen, unsure how to reply, eventually typing a short, "I'm still thinking. I'm safe. Thanks." She pressed send. Her heart hammered, but she forced herself to focus on her tasks. Over the following week, she gradually came to a decision. She agreed to sign the financial support arrangement, but made it clear to Charles Whitmore in an email that she didn't want William controlling her life. She insisted on having her own apartment in her own name, a modest but comfortable place near the shelter, so she could remain in the supportive environment until she felt truly stable. She also wanted the freedom to make medical and personal decisions for the baby. If William truly wanted to be involved, they could discuss visitation and co-parenting later. To her astonishment, William agreed to all of it, no arguments. He forwarded a preliminary lease for a small 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, the rent fully paid for a year. Sarah felt a surge of relief. He's taking responsibility, she thought. Maybe there was a shred of the old William left. But was she ready for more than just a transactional arrangement? Late one night, cradling the phone, she impulsively dialed his personal number. He picked up immediately, sounding anxious. "Sarah." She swallowed. "I just wanted to say thank you," she managed, "for the help." Silence filled the line, then a soft exhale. "Of course. It's the least I can do." Her voice trembled. "This baby, William, it's ours. He or she deserves 2 parents who at least respect each other." He murmured, "I'd like that. I'd like to earn your respect again. And maybe one day, your forgiveness." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She remembered how once, years ago, they could share entire nights, simply talking, dreaming. She had so many questions for him, why he abandoned her, what truly motivated his success, whether there was any love left. But for now, she whispered, "Good night, William," and ended the call. By the time Sarah was entering her 7th month of pregnancy, her life looked drastically different. With William's financial support, she moved into the small but cozy apartment. The walls were painted a cheerful cream color, and there was an extra room she planned to turn into a nursery. The furniture was minimal, just a sofa, a bed, and a kitchen table, but it was hers. Her name was on the lease. Her job at the publishing house had also become slightly more secure. The manager recognized her punctuality and diligence. They offered her an extended contract for another 3 months. With the baby coming, Sarah wasn't sure how long she could keep working, but at least she had some sense of purpose each day. She'd found a routine that made her feel human again. Wake up, check on emails, go to work, come home. Set aside half an hour to jot down story ideas and then rest. She still visited the shelter occasionally, volunteering to help with new arrivals, offering them a spark of hope in the same way Rebecca had done for her. One chilly afternoon, Sarah heard a knock on her apartment door. She opened it to find William standing there, holding a small bouquet of lilies and a bag of groceries. Her heart pounded as she took in his hesitant smile. "I was in the neighborhood," he explained. "Thought I'd stop by, if that's okay." Sarah hesitated. She hadn't told him her exact address. Charles must have. She had been careful with boundaries, not wanting to feel controlled. But she found herself nodding, stepping aside to let him in. He handed her the flowers, which she placed in a vase on the kitchen table. I brought some things, he said, lifting the grocery bag. Fresh fruit, vitamins, and a new jacket for you. The weather's getting colder. The gesture caught her off guard. Thank you, she managed, smoothing her hand over her growing belly. His eyes flicked to the apartment, taking in the bare walls and modest furnishings. It's nice, cozy, he remarked, trying to fill the silence. He glanced at her abdomen again, then back at her face. May I ask, do you know the baby's gender? She shook her head. I want it to be a surprise, she said softly. That's wonderful. William looked down, fiddling with the bag. Finally, he exhaled. Sarah, I know showing up like this might be too forward. I'm trying to respect your space, but I'd also like to be more involved. I want to help with the doctor appointments, the nursery. Anything you need. She studied him, noticing a sincerity in his gaze that hadn't been there during their last tumultuous months together. Why the sudden change, she asked. She recalled the humiliating nights she spent on the streets, clinging to her coat for warmth, while he mingled with venture capitalists. William's shoulders sagged. When I left, I was consumed by my ambition, believing I couldn't handle a relationship. I was terrified of failing. I did fail you in the worst way. Then once success arrived, I felt emptier than ever. All I had was money, status, and a hollow sense of accomplishment. He paused, voice raw. I realize now that none of it matters, without love, without people who truly care about you. I guess I'm trying to atone for that. I can't change the past, but I can try to be here now. Tears prickled Sarah's eyes. The sincerity in his voice shook her. I appreciate the honesty, she said slowly. She wondered if it was real or if guilt simply propelled him now that she was visibly pregnant and vulnerable. Yet a part of her, the part that remembered how they'd once dreamed side by side, wanted to believe him. Would you like some tea? She offered, gesturing to the kettle on the stove. He nodded gratefully. The two of them settled at the tiny kitchen table, sipping tea amidst the silence. The city traffic hummed outside. Neither knew how to pick up the pieces of a shattered marriage in one afternoon, but at least they were there, trying. After a while, William cleared his throat. I'd like to take you to your next prenatal appointment, he said. If you'll let me. I can drive or we can get a car. Whatever you prefer. She hesitated only briefly before nodding. That would be nice. Deep down, a small flicker of warmth lit her heart, something akin to hope. William accompanied Sarah to her next prenatal appointment at Bellevue Hospital. Miss Frances, the shelter nurse who volunteered there, greeted them warmly, but Sarah noticed the curious glances from staff members. She imagined they recognized William. His face was plastered across business headlines. Yet to his credit, he didn't flaunt his status. He simply held Sarah's coat while she changed into a gown and asked the doctor thoughtful questions about the baby's development. They heard the baby's heartbeat again, steady and reassuring. William's expression softened, and Sarah saw tears in his eyes. A powerful wave of emotion struck her. It was the first tangible moment she realized he truly cared about the child. On their way out, he placed a gentle hand on her back, guiding her through the bustling hallway. She allowed the small gesture, longing for closeness, yet keeping her guard up. In the hospital lobby, they unexpectedly bumped into a familiar face, Barbara Donovan Williams' mother. Her short silver hair was styled elegantly, and she wore a designer coat. She froze upon spotting her son with Sarah. William, she exclaimed. Then her gaze flicked to Sarah's round belly, and her eyes narrowed. I heard rumors, but I thought you two were done. Sarah instinctively braced herself. She recalled the tension with her mother-in-law, who never quite warmed to her. Barbara had always found subtle ways to criticize Sarah's family background and modest means. She also blamed Sarah for distracting William from more important ambitions. William squared his shoulders. "Mother, this is Sarah. My wife. She's pregnant with our child." Barbara's lips pressed into a thin line. "So you're reconciling?" she asked, voice laced with disapproval. Sarah couldn't hold back. "I wouldn't call it that," she said quietly. "We're trying to figure things out, at least for the baby's sake." Barbara sniffed disdainfully. "William, you have far too many responsibilities to let old mistakes drag you down." She eyed Sarah as if she were an intruder. "Why didn't you tell him you were pregnant sooner?" A flame of anger rose in Sarah. "I tried. He left, and I had no way to reach him. And trust me, I wouldn't call carrying your grandchild a mistake." William gently took his mother's arm. "Enough, Mother. The baby is my responsibility, and I won't have you speak to Sarah that way. We're not discussing this here in a hospital lobby." Barbara sniffed again. "We'll talk later, William." She glared at Sarah with thinly veiled contempt, then turned on her heel and walked away. Heart-pounding, Sarah noticed people staring. She blinked back tears, humiliated by the confrontation. William's jaw was tight. "I'm sorry." "She had no right to talk to you like that," he said softly. But Sarah's mind raced. She recalled how Barbara had once told her she wasn't good enough for William, that he needed a partner more on his level. Now wealthy and successful, William's family clearly saw Sarah as an obstacle. "It's fine," she muttered, though her trembling hands said otherwise. "I'll manage." They walked outside, the crisp air hitting their faces. William turned to her. "Please don't let her get to you. She doesn't speak for me." Sarah found her resolve. "I won't. But if we're going to co-parent, I need to know you'll stand by me, not be swayed by your mother's opinions." He nodded, eyes earnest. "I promise." Though his promise felt genuine, Sarah couldn't ignore the chill left by the confrontation. She remembered the nights when William's mother belittled her for dreaming of being a writer, for lacking financial security. Would that negativity poison their child's life too? Or had William grown enough to shield his new family from it? Only time would tell. On the drive back to Sarah's apartment, the tension was palpable. William tried to make small talk about the baby's due date, about nursery decor. But Sarah was lost in her thoughts. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he admitted quietly, "My mother was always controlling. Part of why I left was because I felt suffocated by her expectations, by the pressure of success. I let that overshadow you and me. I'm sorry." Sarah clutched her seatbelt. "What's done is done," she said, voice steady. "Let's just focus on the future, on doing right by this baby. That's all that matters." Inside, though, her emotions churned. Could we really have a future together, she wondered? Or is it just going to be co-parenting with a man I once loved? At her apartment, he walked her to the door. "Call me if you need anything," he said softly. She nodded, uncertain if she'd ever be ready to let him fully back into her life. The final weeks of Sarah's pregnancy arrived with a swirl of conflicting emotions. Her belly felt enormous, every movement an effort. Sleep eluded her, replaced by a blend of excitement and anxiety about the impending birth. William visited regularly, bringing supplies, maternity clothes, organic food, baby items. They spoke about practicalities, pediatricians' childcare options possible names, yet the question of their relationship remained unresolved. At times, they fell into an unexpected closeness, sharing a laugh at a tiny onesie with silly prints reminiscing about their college days. In those moments, Sarah glimpsed the man she fell in love with, his eyes warm and tender. But the memory of abandonment always lurked. She couldn't easily forget sleeping on sidewalks, shivering in the winter cold, all while he soared to stardom. Trust would not be rebuilt overnight. One evening she typed away at a short story, her old passion for writing rekindling, when a gentle knock came at the door. She opened it to find William in casual clothes holding a large container of homemade soup. "You mentioned in passing that you craved chicken soup," he said, smiling sheepishly. "I asked my personal chef to make a batch." "Don't worry, I didn't cook it myself. That would be disastrous." Sarah's laughter slipped out before she could stop it. "Thank you. That's thoughtful." He set the container down, noticing her manuscript drafts scattered across the table. "Are you writing again?" She blushed, nodding. "Just trying to get the creative juices flowing. Something for me, you know, to find myself again." He asked if he could read a snippet. She hesitated, then allowed him. He read quietly, eyes darting across the page. When he finished, he looked up, an admiring expression on his face. "This is really good," he said softly. "I forgot how talented you are." She swallowed, her heart fluttering. He was praising her, not dismissing her efforts as frivolous, like he once had. "Thank you," she whispered. They talked about the story about a lone traveler who finds hope in unexpected places. The conversation flowed naturally, reminiscent of their younger selves. At one point, he gently placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. A shared smile passed between them, something both tender and uncertain. Later that night, as he left, she lingered at the door. "William," she said softly, "I just want you to know. I see you trying. I appreciate it." He exhaled, relief washing over his face. "I'll keep trying, Sarah." But the next day, chaos returned. William called her in a panic, asking her to watch the news. Another business scandal had broken out, accusations that Donovan Enterprises engaged in questionable stock trading. Rumors swirled that William's mother, Barbara, had been pulling strings behind the scenes, orchestrating backdoor deals. William's name was splashed across headlines with tabloids, speculating about the moral integrity of his entire operation. Sarah flipped on her old TV set, seeing reporters swarm in front of Donovan Enterprises. A few sensationalist channels displayed a picture of Sarah from months ago, claiming she was the estranged wife carrying the heir to a troubled empire. She felt nauseous. Was she about to be dragged into the public eye? William texted, "I'm sorry. This is out of control. I never wanted you to be involved." She fought the urge to panic, but the stress weighed heavily, and within hours, mild contractions started. She was only 36 weeks along, a bit early, but still within a safe range. The contractions weren't severe yet, but she felt them enough to know her body might be preparing for labor. She called Miss Francis, who advised her to rest and hydrate, warning her to come to the hospital if things intensified. Night descended, and the tabloids kept spewing stories. A photo of Barbara, stern-faced, refused to speak to reporters. They insinuated that William's entire fortune could be at risk. Sarah tried not to care about money, but she worried about the baby. If Donovan Enterprises collapsed under scandal, would her child be caught in the crossfire of a messy public fiasco? When William arrived at her apartment, he looked drained, like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry for the media circus," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I had no idea my mother was involved in shady trades. I've fired the people responsible, but the damage is done." Sarah tried to remain calm, but the Braxton Hicks contractions flared, causing her to wince. William noticed immediately fear flashing across his features. "Are you okay? I think—" She paused, breathing through the discomfort. "I might be in early labor." His face paled, and in that moment, all talk of scandal and business melted away. "Let's get you to the hospital," he said gently, helping her gather her things. As they hurried out, Sarah realized a new chapter was beginning. Whatever storms raged outside, she was about to bring a child into the world, and she needed William's unwavering support. Inside the maternity wing at Bellevue Hospital, time seemed to slip into a blur of fluorescent lights, medical chatter, and waves of pain. Sarah was admitted with mild contractions that by midnight turned fierce. William stayed by her side, gripping her hand through each surge. Sweating and trembling, Sarah alternated between tears and focused breathing, clinging to the promise that soon she'd hold her baby. It was a tumultuous night. At one point, the baby's heart rate dipped slightly, prompting quick action from the medical staff. Fear stabbed through Sarah. She locked eyes with William, seeing raw terror reflected there. In that moment, all bitterness faded, replaced by the realization that they both desperately wanted their child to be safe. The baby's heartbeat stabilized, and relief flowed. Hours crawled by. Finally, near dawn, Sarah felt the overwhelming urge to push. Nurses coached her, encouraging her to bear down. She felt like every muscle in her body was on fire. William murmured supportive words, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. With a final guttural cry, she felt the release of pain and the sudden miraculous wail of new life. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, holding up a tiny, squirming newborn. A rush of emotions seized Sarah. Love, relief, awe. She reached out trembling arms as they placed the baby on her chest. Shocked by the warmth of that tiny body, tears streamed down Sarah's face. William's eyes glistened too, a rare vulnerability she'd never seen in him before. "Welcome to the world," Sarah whispered, voice choked, pressing a kiss to the baby's wet forehead. The little girl quieted, opening her eyes for a brief second, as if trying to focus on her mother's face. Later they moved Sarah to a recovery room. William remained close, pacing the hallway, on calls to his legal team, but always returning to check on Sarah and the baby. He smiled whenever he saw them together, as though the world outside, with all its scandal and drama, had lost its power here. Barbara tried to visit, but Sarah requested only William and the medical staff be allowed in. She wasn't ready to confront her mother-in-law. Not yet. Meanwhile, word arrived that the scandal at Donovan Enterprises was being resolved. William had stepped forward, taking responsibility for corporate oversight lapses and cooperating with regulators. He was determined to repair the damage rather than hide. 2 days passed in the hospital, a whirlwind of feeding diaper changes and exhausted naps. Sarah watched William hold their daughter, marveling at how gently he cradled her. They hadn't formally picked a name. Sarah had half a dozen favorites. While gazing into her daughter's round, curious eyes, she decided on Hope. It felt fitting. This tiny baby was the embodiment of new beginnings. When discharge day came, William insisted on driving them to Sarah's apartment. He carefully carried the car seat, setting it up by the living room couch. Sarah gently unbuckled Hope, lifting her close. For a moment, they stood together in the quiet apartment, the hush broken only by soft baby sighs. "I want to make a pledge," William said, voice low. to be here for you and Hope, always. I know I can't erase the past, but I swear I'll do everything in my power to make our future better." Sarah gazed at him, then at Hope. Her heart brimmed with a kaleidoscope of emotions: uncertainty, gratitude, a cautious desire to heal. "It won't be easy," she murmured. "We have a lot to work through, but I'd like to try." He exhaled relief, flooding his features. "We'll go at your pace. Whatever you need." She nodded, tears glimmering. Over his shoulder she saw a reflection in the window herself, William and Hope in his arms forming a fragile family portrait. Perhaps fate had brought them full circle. The child they created now bound them with a love that neither betrayal nor success could sever. For weeks they navigated those uncharted waters. William balanced corporate responsibilities with fatherhood, often losing track of time as he admired his sleeping daughter. Sarah slowly let her guard down, recognizing that while forgiveness would be a journey, she didn't have to walk it alone anymore. Each day, she felt stronger. Each day, baby Hope grew a reminder that life could emerge triumphant, even from heartbreak. Whether or not Sarah and William's relationship would fully mend remained to be seen. But for the first time, she believed in second chances. In a world as unpredictable as theirs, one truth shone clear: love, when nurtured, can heal even the deepest wounds. And so, from the frigid sidewalks of homelessness to the gentle warmth of a newfound family, Sarah and William's story shows that life rarely unfolds as expected, but hope can spark miracles. Their journey reminds us that every hardship carries the seed of possibility, and every broken bond can mend with genuine remorse, forgiveness, and perseverance. Thank you for joining me in this emotional roller coaster of heartache, redemption, and rebirth. If this story moved you, if you felt Sarah's struggles and found inspiration in her resilience, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support ensures we can continue creating dramatic, heartfelt stories that spark conversations and spread hope. Comment below. What part of Sarah and William's journey resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. Together we celebrate love's power to heal no matter how broken the path once seemed.